The Galactic Empire had conquered everything. Every planet, every enemy, every corner of the known universe had bowed before its might. Their fleets blackened skies, their soldiers marched through alien cities like gods, and their laws had become the only truth across the stars. Resistance was a memory, rebellion a joke. Entire civilizations had been reduced to ash or submission. But one world remained untouched, a small blue planet known as Earth. A world considered insignificant in resources, backward in technology, and yet, avoided. Always avoided. Within the high councils of the Empire, Earth had been the subject of whispered debate for years. Not because it posed a visible threat, but because of what wasn't known about it. Scattered records from a distant, long-buried military operation existed, an old mission that ended in silence. No survivors. No reports. Just one entry that repeated in red, asterisk. No return. No trace. Asterisk. That mystery had kept Earth off the target list for decades. But now, at the height of the Empire's glory, the leadership saw Earth not as a danger, but as an unfinished page. An anomaly. And for an empire built on the idea of total domination, an anomaly was unacceptable. They would not rest until every star, every speck of dust, bowed to them, including Earth. So they summoned their most legendary general. The Undefeated. A tactician whose name was etched in victory across 100 star systems. He had shattered empires, crushed rebellions before they began, and forged unity through fire. When he walked into the war chamber, even the other high-ranking officials straightened their backs. His presence was power. When the order was given, invade Earth, everyone expected a nod, a calculated smile, and the machinery of war to begin its relentless roll. But instead, the general fell silent. His expression, always calm and controlled, shifted, subtly at first, then unmistakably. A pause. A breath. Then, firmly and clearly, he refused. Gasps followed. The room froze. A refusal? From him? The council was stunned. Their finest warrior, the icon of imperial strength, had declined the final conquest. They demanded an explanation. He gave none. No argument, no justification, just a silent, immovable refusal. His eyes seemed distant, as though haunted by something too deep for words. Insulted, the leadership reacted with rage. He was stripped of honors, denounced as a traitor, and thrown into a high-security prison. His name removed from the records of glory. He had gone from symbol to shame in one breath. In his cell, dark and quiet, he remained composed. Days passed. Then one night, a young soldier, curious or perhaps seeking wisdom, sat beside his cell and asked the question that burned in every mind across the Empire. "Why did you refuse?" The general looked up. His eyes were old, but not weak. Slowly, he drew a breath and began. He spoke of his grandfather, a warrior too, a hero of an earlier age. He told of a mission long ago, when the Empire first sent a fleet to Earth. They thought it would be easy. Primitive planet, inferior weapons, no threat. What followed was not just defeat, it was obliteration. Every ship lost. Every soldier killed. Except one. His grandfather. But he hadn't returned whole. He'd lost a leg, not in combat, but as a message. A warning. The humans had left him alive with one purpose: to speak. To tell his kind what Earth really was. He came back silent, broken, and changed. For the rest of his life, he never spoke of battle, only of caution. And he left one lesson for his grandson, asterisk. Never wake the dead planet. Never challenge Earth. Fear what fights like it has nothing to lose. Asterisk. That memory had lived inside the general like a shadow. He'd won every war, every campaign, but Earth remained untouched in his mind, not because he feared losing, but because he understood what loss meant against them. The humans hadn't just fought, they had punished. Without mercy. Without hesitation. With a cruelty that made even the Empire's brutality seem calculated. The young soldier listened in silence. He didn't laugh. He didn't argue. Something in the general's voice made it all real. Outside the cell, the Empire called the general a coward. They made speeches. They declared Earth's conquest inevitable. But the first true defeat had already occurred, and it came not through battle, but through one man's decision to say, no. The prison walls were silent, but the young soldier's thoughts were loud. What he had heard from the general didn't leave his mind. A refusal born not of fear, but of inherited truth, a warning passed down not in strategy manuals, but in scars. He kept returning to the cell, asking questions. And slowly, the general unfolded the buried history his empire had tried to forget. He spoke of a mission that never made it into official records, known only to a few in hushed tones. Long before the empire rose to its current power, before its fleets blanketed the galaxy, Earth had already been approached. The High Command back then had considered it a formality. The planet was young, its defenses obsolete, its people divided. Conquest seemed inevitable. A full battalion was deployed, thousands of elite soldiers, heavy carriers, AI-controlled drones, orbital bombers. The invasion began with precision. Key cities were marked, communication hubs isolated. Nothing in Earth's orbit signaled organized resistance. But then, the silence shifted. The first squads landed without resistance. They advanced confidently. But then, communication stopped. Entire platoons disappeared without trace. Sensors malfunctioned. Maps became useless. One of the Empire's captains transmitted a short, broken message before the signal cut. "They're not what we thought. They're everywhere. They don't run. They hunt." What followed was chaos. Earth's response wasn't coordinated in the traditional sense. It was scattered, decentralized, and terrifyingly effective. Civilians fought like trained soldiers. Traps laced into terrain. Infrastructure repurposed into weapons. Earth's forces didn't match the Empire in firepower, but they surpassed them in ruthlessness. The humans didn't just fight back, they dismantled their enemies from within. Captured soldiers were never recovered. Drones were hijacked and turned on their owners. Satellite footage showed enemy units running into buildings that collapsed behind them. Entire squads vanished into forests, deserts, cities, never to emerge again. It wasn't just resistance. It was psychological warfare. The general's grandfather, a mid-ranking commander back then, was captured early. What he witnessed changed him forever. He was kept alive deliberately. The humans interrogated him, not for information, but for observation. They wanted him to see their methods, their thinking, their limits, which, to his horror, seemed not to exist. Then, after days of silence, they released him. He was found alone on the edge of a destroyed extraction site. His leg had been severed, not from combat, but surgically. There was no torture, no interrogation marks. Just a clean amputation and a simple sentence carved into the wreckage beside him. Asterisk. Go back. Tell them. Don't return. Asterisk. When he was recovered by a distant scout ship, his mind was fractured. He spoke little, but when he did, his voice trembled. He said the Earthlings didn't win because of weapons. They won because they treated war like survival. Not victory, not pride, asterisk survival. Asterisk, and in survival, no rule matters. No mercy is given. Only one outcome is allowed: the enemy does not walk away. He became a recluse. Refused military honors. Burned his medals. And to his grandson, the future general, he gave a single message repeated again and again. Asterisk. If they rise again, do not face them. Their silence is not weakness. It is warning. Asterisk. The general carried that memory through every campaign. He had seen countless enemies. Had crushed civilizations far more advanced than Earth. But nothing ever matched the weight of that story. The look in his grandfather's eyes had never faded from memory. That is why, when Earth was named, he knew. It wasn't just another planet. It was a graveyard disguised as home. A beast in human form. And it had been quiet for too long. The young soldier sat frozen. He asked, "Why didn't you tell the council?" The general's answer was quiet. They wouldn't have believed me. They believe in power, not wisdom. They will only understand when they lose everything. Outside the prison, war preparations continued. New generals were selected. Eager, arrogant, untested in real fear. The invasion would go forward. The empire would not be denied. But deep inside the cold prison, one man had already seen the outcome, and accepted it. The High Council wasted no time. The general's refusal was dismissed as weakness, the trauma of a long-dead generation. In their eyes, fear had no place in strategy, and memory had no power against numbers. Earth was just one more world to be consumed. If one legend refused to act, others would take his place, eager, ambitious, and hungry for their own legacy. A new set of generals was summoned, rising stars from recent campaigns, full of victories but void of scars. They had read of Earth only in outdated data logs, saw it marked with question marks and redacted files. But where the old saw danger, they saw opportunity. They viewed Earth not as a threat, but as a forgotten challenge, a way to prove themselves greater than the man who had once been undefeated. The Empire's war machine roared back to life. Dozens of fleets prepared. War councils buzzed with tactical simulations. Orbital siege crafts were modified for unknown environments. Psychological warfare experts analyzed what little they had about human culture, hoping to find exploitable weaknesses. They dismissed old records of resistance as outdated anomalies. They believed humanity's fearsome reputation was inflated, an exaggeration born from failure, not truth. The imprisoned general watched it unfold from his cell. No one visited him anymore, except one, the same young soldier who had listened to his story. His face had changed, not in years, but in expression. He was quieter now. Thoughtful. Watching the preparations not with excitement, but with unease. One evening, he returned to the general with more questions, though this time his voice trembled. Do they really fight like that? No fear, no retreat? The general answered calmly. They don't fight to win. They fight because they refuse to lose. And that makes them unstoppable. The fleets launched. The skies above Imperial worlds darkened as thousands of warships passed overhead. Across the Empire, citizens watched proudly, unaware they were witnessing the beginning of their own unraveling. Propaganda echoed from every screen. The Earth will fall. Statues were unveiled of generals who hadn't even fought yet. Victory speeches were written before the first shot. The young soldier, now reassigned to one of the invasion fleets, carried the general's words like a quiet burden. He kept his doubts hidden, but his eyes lingered longer on escape plans, backup protocols, and emergency comms. Something inside him whispered that what they were heading toward was not war, but reckoning. Within the command ships, the new generals held their heads high. They saw Earth's orbit approaching through their viewports and felt no fear. One of them, brash and loud, turned to his officers and said, "This planet has hidden for long enough. It's time the universe watched it fall." They didn't know Earth was watching too. Not through satellites, but through silence. Through absence. Earth had let them come. The general, in chains aboard a cruiser, was kept in a reinforced containment cell. Not for security, but for humiliation. They wanted him to watch what he had feared. They wanted him to see that his refusal had been foolish. That Earth was nothing but a ghost. But as the ships approached the planet, the general sat still, staring through the reinforced window, expression unreadable. His breathing calm. His eyes quiet. Not in fear, asterisk in knowing star. The first dropships prepared to deploy. AI systems plotted landing zones. Commanders gave orders with a confidence only inexperience can breed. The assault was about to begin. But far below, hidden in the blue and green of the unassuming world, Earth waited, not with open arms, but sharpened claws. Back in his cell, the general said only one sentence, not to anyone, just into the quiet. They never learn, until it's far too late. The invasion began exactly as planned. Empire warships descended into Earth's orbit in precise formation, a display of calculated dominance. Their scanners detected no resistance, no defensive satellites, no anti-space batteries. The surface appeared quiet, too quiet. That silence was mistaken for surrender. Landing teams deployed confidently. Dropships pierced the atmosphere like arrows, spreading across continents. Every region was mapped, every human city targeted. They expected chaos. Instead, they found stillness. The first troops touched ground and met no resistance. Roads were empty. Communications silent. Earth systems didn't respond. There were no armies to greet them, no panicked civilians, no sirens. Just cities, quiet, still, almost inviting. Commanders relaxed. Some laughed. Others began broadcasting live feeds back to the Empire, declaring victory was imminent. They moved forward, splitting into units, establishing forward bases. Equipment was deployed. Protocols followed. Earth was being claimed. Then, without warning, systems failed. Communication towers jammed. Navigation software went blind. Drones fell from the sky. Mechs turned to static. Emergency backups activated, then shut down just as quickly. Within minutes, full battalions were isolated, blind, deaf, and disoriented. And then, Earth struck. Not with lasers or orbital strikes, but with brutal, intimate force. Every shadow became a weapon. Ambushes erupted from beneath rubble, from forests, from beneath the earth itself. Cities the invaders thought were empty came alive, not with soldiers, but with hunters. Human resistance didn't move like an army. It moved like instinct. Like the planet itself had turned against them. They were fast, efficient, and cruelly creative. Enemy troops vanished without leaving a trace. In some cases, only helmets remained, placed intentionally, mocking. Traps were laid within infrastructure, elevators rigged to collapse, power grids weaponized, doors that exploded upon opening. The invaders weren't just losing, they were being studied, analyzed in real time, exploited. Earth's defenders didn't wear uniforms. They didn't march. They hunted. And as the first day of invasion turned into night, panic began to spread within the Empire's forces. One general, assigned to lead the Western Theater, tried to regroup. But every signal he sent was intercepted. Every command unit he dispatched was found dismantled. Dismantled, not destroyed. Someone had taken them apart, piece by piece. When he finally tried to retreat, the sky turned black, not from weather, but from electromagnetic pulses. Entire ships fell from orbit, crashing into their own lines. Back on the command ship, where the captive general sat shackled, alarms screamed. Officers shouted over one another, calling for extraction, backup, answers. None came. All channels were dead. And he, the prisoner, simply sat, watching chaos unfold on screens meant to broadcast victory. His silence was not confusion. It was recognition. The young soldier who had once listened to his story stood frozen beside him, watching his comrades fall one by one. The screens showed burning forests, collapsing strongholds, troops fleeing into empty streets only to vanish in seconds. A city block collapsed under its own weight, revealing an entire tunnel system beneath it. Waiting. The soldier turned to the general. "They knew we were coming," he whispered. The general finally spoke. "They've always known. You think you invaded Earth today?" He looked directly into the soldier's eyes. "You invaded it the last time. And they never forgot." By the second day, more than half the Empire's forces were lost or unaccounted for. Extraction plans failed. Reinforcements never arrived. Entire divisions stopped transmitting. Drones sent to recover them found only static, wreckage, or nothing. One general, last of the replacements, attempted to rally what was left. He made it 3 blocks before his convoy disappeared beneath a collapsing bridge rigged with precision only desperation could perfect. His last message? A scream. On the third day, Earth broadcasted a message, not on Imperial frequencies, but through their own hijacked channels. No face appeared. No voice. Just text, slowly displayed on every surviving screen. "You were warned." The Empire's ships tried to flee, but Earth's countermeasures had already infected their systems. Orbiting crafts fell one by one. A few made it out, limping, broken, with fragments of their forces still breathing, but silent. Back in the central command vessel, now powerless and drifting, the only sound was the quiet static of defeat. Amidst it all, the prisoner general sat with closed eyes, breathing calmly. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He simply knew. He had seen the past. Now they were seeing it too. The smoke of shattered ships still hung in Earth's atmosphere. Wreckage from the Empire's once mighty fleet now orbited in silence, drifting like broken bones in the void. On the ground, the final pockets of resistance had been crushed, not by Earth's numbers, but by its resolve. The few surviving invaders crawled through debris, disarmed, dazed, and defeated. Among them was the imprisoned general, still alive, still shackled. His transport had crashed during the final stages of the invasion, yet he emerged from the wreckage untouched by either Earth's fire or its fury. Human scouts found him sitting in silence near the ruins of what used to be an Imperial war bunker, his eyes lifted toward the sky where his people's fleet had once burned. They surrounded him with weapons drawn, yet his face showed no fear. Only understanding. One soldier stepped forward. Her uniform bore no rank, but her presence commanded respect. She studied the general for a long moment, saying nothing. Then she asked a single question. "Why were you shackled?" The general replied, "Because I said no." There was silence. A beat. Then she turned to her squad and gave a simple order. "Take him alive!" He was led through what remained of Earth's battlefield, now eerily quiet. Ruined Imperial walkers lay on their sides, being picked apart by scavengers and scientists. Human fighters moved among wreckage without celebration. Their expressions were grim, focused. No cheers. No triumph. Only purpose. This had not been victory, it had been warning. The general was brought to a human command center deep underground, carved from stone and steel. There, instead of interrogation, he was simply offered water and silence. Days passed. No torture, no trial. Only observation. And then, one day, the same woman returned. She placed a data tablet in front of him. On it were the names of every fallen Imperial general. One by one. Every commander he had known, gone. Every soldier who had doubted his words, lost. Every fleet, destroyed or captured. He scrolled in silence, absorbing it all. Finally, she asked, "Why did you try to stop them?" He looked up. "Because I listened. Because my grandfather survived your fire and told me what your silence really meant. He came back broken, not because of pain, but because of truth. And I believed him." She said nothing, only nodded. A rare gesture of respect. Then came the real question. "What will your people do now?" The general didn't answer immediately. He stared at the map of fallen ships, dead worlds, broken arrogance. Finally, he said, "If they are wise, nothing. If they are proud, they'll try again. And next time, it won't be with fleets. It'll be with fear and vengeance." She studied him. "And you?" He looked her in the eye. "I won't return." A pause. "Because they'll kill you?" she asked. He shook his head. "Because I don't want to. I belong nowhere now." Later that night, as he sat in a quiet cell, not as a prisoner, but a guest, the young Imperial soldier, the one who had once questioned him in the darkness of the Empire's prisons, stood outside. He had survived too, barely. But something in him had changed. The certainty was gone from his voice. In its place, understanding. He looked through the barrier at the general and whispered, "You were right." The general didn't respond. He only nodded once, solemnly. The next morning, the humans made their decision. They would not execute him. They would not parade him. They would let him live, and return if he chose to. But he never would. Instead, Earth sent a single message through the void, to the shattered remnants of the Empire. "Do not mistake our silence for surrender. We are not your enemy unless you choose to become ours. We fight not for conquest. We fight so that no one else has to. Remember that. The general was never seen again on any Imperial world. Rumors spread, some say he died peacefully on Earth, others claimed he vanished into the wilderness, never to be heard from again. And the young soldier? He disappeared as well. Whispers say he stayed behind, having finally seen truth for himself. Back in the Empire, silence followed. No new fleets launched. No new plans were made for Earth. Maps were updated, Earth marked no longer as a target, but as a dead zone. A place where even pride goes to die. And somewhere, in a quiet archive buried deep in the Empire's core, a new entry was written beside Earth's name. We lost. We were spared. Never return.